escort His Excellency. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Nayib Bukele, President of the Republic of El Salvador. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Nayib Bukele, President of the Republic of El Salvador, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Excelentísimo señor presidente.
Your Excellency, President of the General Assembly, heads of state and government, my wife, Gabriela, my daughter, Laila, distinguished members of the different delegations here with us today, friends watching us on the different platforms, ladies and gentlemen. Since the first time I came to this assembly, I've reminded you of the need to renew and to reinvent ourselves. And I'm not only referring to this organisation or to this General Assembly, but rather to all countries, especially those that have similar circumstances to ours. Nor did I say this just because, but rather because I believe it, and because in my country, in El Salvador, this is what we're doing. El Salvador, like other developing countries, has always dreamed of being great. For some countries, this dream at some point became possible. However, for others, like our country, this was always something unthinkable. We didn't believe it was possible, or even that we'd get close. In fact, I think that nobody listening to this speech would have thought that they'd say the name El Salvador, or hear it, and think of a global benchmark or a positive example. However, despite all of the stumbling blocks, we decided to take the risk. We didn't accept the fate that others had decided for us. Now, today, 4 years since my government took office, nobody would even dare to deny that for the first time in its 202 years of history, the smallest country on our continent would have made such great strides forward to achieve this dream of greatness. In such a short amount of time, El Salvador went from being the world murder capital, from being the most dangerous country in the world, to becoming the safest country in Latin America. This isn't a promise anymore. It's the reality that the El Salvadorian people are living through, and anyone from abroad is welcome to go and see it for themselves. Thus, many people in the world are following what's happening in our country, especially in Latin America. However, also in the United States and elsewhere. They're seeing what's happening in El Salvador and wondering why they can't do the same in their country. The answer is clear and simple. They must make their own decisions. They must reaffirm their right to use common sense, to try their own methods, and to implement their own plans, and to design their own systems. No country has the right to impose its ideas, to impose their way of doing things, even less when these things don't even work in our countries. In every single one of the decisions that we've made, we have reaffirmed our legitimate right to govern ourselves, even if this could have meant making a mistake. However, we didn't make a mistake. We were successful. In fact, we had a resounding success. And so, we didn't only reaffirm our right to make our own decisions, but also our right to be right. There's not one single recipe or single formula that works the same for everyone. However, I do believe that there is one ingredient that all recipes should include, or should at least have the right to include, and this ingredient is courage. It's necessary to have the right attitude, the guts, the determination to do what needs to be done, even when other people are questioning you or criticising you. For decades, we tried everything that we were told was the right thing for us. And it got us fighting a civil war for things that were far removed from us, because the conflict between the West and the Soviet Union was being waged in our country. More than 85,000 people dead, and one destroyed country later. They told us that actually that wasn't the right recipe, but that now there was a new recipe available. And so they made us sign up to some fake peace agreements. There was no peace in them, and the only thing that they did was enable two different gangs to plunder the loot. They tried each different formula and nothing worked. And then, being under foreign powers, the country went to the right, and then later, also under foreign actors, the country went to the left. And that was the situation during the 30-year post-war period, where there were more deaths than during the Civil War, more poverty and more violence. Nobody did anything to change the root causes of the system, nor the institutions, and certainly not the laws either. Everything that happened over those years was done with the support, the consent, and the imposition of those who proclaimed themselves to be the great defenders of human rights and democratic institutionality. Rather than giving us medicine to make us better, in fact, what they were giving us was poison. They claimed that we should continue to do the same as what had been done in the past. They claimed that the same people that had looted our country and killed us should continue to govern or at least share power. However, this time we told them no. We turned down their poison, and for the first time we tried our own remedy. Thank God it worked. The first thing that we did was to ensure that we had God and the people on board, because no transformation that's worth its while can be done obeying external powers. And secondly, we created our own method, a method that was designed for our own reality, created by those who experienced this reality in our own flesh and blood. Then the El Salvadorian people gave us, vested their trust in us twice through votes, several times, but perhaps these two votes were the most important, and the first of the two votes was when they elected me as their president. The second was when they decided to give us governability. Then we knew that we had an obligation to our people. An obligation to make the decisions required in order to address our most pressing problem, insecurity. We needed to make those decisions. The efforts that were being made to improve health or the economy were pointless if our people continued to be killed. And there was no point in transforming education if the gangs were giving orders in our prisons to murder our children cowardly and forcefully recruit our youth. We couldn't decide to invest millions of dollars in building and improving our road infrastructure if the El Salvadorian people couldn't even walk around the streets. And so we made the decision to purge the judiciary and the prison system, and then we changed laws to ensure that terrorists wouldn't escape out of prison anymore. And it was at that time that international condemnation started. Some countries, some media outlets, and some so-called experts started systematic attacks against us for all of the decisions we were making. People who never used their power or influence to call for security for our people who were being murdered suddenly started to speak against the decisions we were making to stop this massacre. Countries that never condemned the murder of between 30, 40, or even 50 El Salvadorian people per day suddenly started calling for explanations on why we changed the public prosecutor's office, why we changed magistrates or judges. Don't you think that's absurd to question us for that? Who is responsible for the policy for domestic security in any country in the world? Well, the answer is it's the responsibility of the government, the executive, through the state security forces, through the penitentiaries, penitentiary system in cooperation with the Public Prosecutor's Office and with the judiciary. This was an indispensable condition for everyone to work together in the same direction for the plan to work. If we had left the same public prosecutor in office, if we had left the same judges in place as before that were being protected by a lot of people, and well, then we would still be the world's murder capital. If we had listened, we would have continued to lose thousands and thousands of El Salvadorian people to terrorists. Thank God we didn't pay any attention to them. Every single one of the decisions that we have made have led us to this point. Today, El Salvador competes with Canada for being the safest country on the continent. We're not only the country in Latin America with the least homicides per capita by a long way, but we have also reduced all crime to a minimum level. People can now walk around the streets that for a long time they weren't able to walk around due to the gangs. Businesses are no longer paying extortion money. Children are now able to go and play in the park without being scared of being recruited or murdered. These are things that a lot of you might take for granted, think are basic, to walk around your streets, but in our country they didn't exist. We have been criticised and condemned for all of the decisions we've made at all times. Intellectuals, journalists, politicians and organisations from across the board have been focused on a debate over what we're doing, and I've come here to tell you that there's no time for this debate anymore, because the decisions that we took were the right ones. We are no longer the world murder capital, and we managed to achieve this in record time. Today, we are a benchmark of security, and nobody can cast doubt on that. The results are there. They are irrefutable. In El Salvador, we did the right thing for El Salvador. And now we benefit from this level of security. We've been able to open up our country to the entire world. In this year alone, we received thousands of athletes at the Central American and Caribbean Games. We are the world epicenter of surf, and we have just signed up to an agreement with Google to digitalize the state and services like education and health. We are receiving more and more tourism, both domestic and from overseas. More and more people are coming to see what we're doing and investing in El Salvador. Many of El Salvadorians abroad that spent years without returning home are now investing in the country and have plans to come home. According to a study carried out last year, in 2022, by the International Organization for Migration, a United Nations agency, more than 60% of the El Salvadorian people who live in the United States, there are a lot of El Salvadorians in the United States, plan to return to El Salvador. We know that we still have a lot to do. However, we are on track to achieving our goal of reversing the mass exodus of El Salvadorian people as a result of all of the wrong decisions made in the past and the civil war, and to achieve our dream of having reverse migration for more El Salvadorian people to return than leave the country. And the studies of the very United Nations are already showing this. Within a few months, we will also be hosting Miss Universe. And that is another event that will put us in the eyes of the world and will bring even more tourism and even more investment. In addition to all of this, we are establishing more and better relationships with our allies who want to support us to build our country, to build our dream. And I'm not just saying all of this to boast, although I am very proud of everything that we have achieved. I'm saying this because this is an example of what all countries can achieve when they start to claim their sovereignty. Look at us. We were recognized for violence, and now we're recognized for our landscapes, our waves, and above all, for our courage. Now the world can see our full potential. We have a country full of marvellous things to offer. People who visit us can eat on the beach, can surf world-class waves at the perfect temperature all year. They can have lunch in the mountains and taste the best coffee in the world with volcanoes and beautiful lakes as a backdrop, and they can then have dinner in the capital with all of its modernity, commodities, and with the security that many cities in the first world would like to have. And they can do all of this in just one single day. But the best thing is that they will find in our people a friendly, hard-working people that is always looking to do something new. When they come to our country, they will realize that the El Salvadorian people are proud of being El Salvadorian, something that just a few years ago wasn't the case. El Salvador is being reborn because we dared to challenge ourselves, and we decided that nothing nor anyone should tell us what to do. We are still very far from where we want to arrive. However, we will continue to work hard and make our own decisions so that we can achieve this greatness that we aspire to. We believe that the world also needs to be reborn, but this is the decision of each different people. We, in El Salvador, are leading by example, laying a path that anyone can take. Thank you very much, and may God bless all of the nations of the world.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of El Salvador for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency.